We're back for more jet lag analysis. As always, we'll begin with the recap of the past episode, which is episode 3, which you should have watched before carrying on with this video. So here's your spoiler alert if you haven't watched episode 3 yet. So let's begin with Sam's run. This was part of my predictions video in my previously, and we saw that Sam was on the way to Donghae, and I predicted that he would favor rather the coastal route down to Pohang. And not only was that correct, but we noticed that according to my research, the earliest train that can leave from Donghae is 9:51, and as it turns out, yes, it was exactly 9:51 when the runners played the game. The main thing that caught me off guard was that, as it turns out, the rules allow the blockers to place down roadblocks and battle challenges on non-node stations. Now, I'm really not sure why this possibility did not cross my mind. I think I just had that assumption based on the way they explained the game, but turns out that assumption was completely false, and in fact, a viewer, Ayuka Sabon, called me out on it, wondering if it is possible to drop down blocks on non-node stations, and they're absolutely right. Now, I responded to them saying that I think logistically this could be challenging, but after some thought, I realized that it can be easily solved. You just don't allow the blockers to put down hidden blocks on non-node stations. Hidden blocks must be on nodal stations. I think if you think about it logically, it makes sense. If you can put down hidden blocks on non-node stations, then the runner would need to inform the blockers of their position every time they stop at a station, which kind of goes against the entire point of the game. The whole point of the game is for the runner's position to be concealed until they pass by a node. So because of this this false assumption completely invalidates a lot of the strategy discussion I've had thus far. Remember, I mentioned that the only way to really defend against a runner coming down is to place down a block on Dongdae-gu, because they can simply skip Seogyeongju with a good train. As it turns out, if you can block Pohang, which is a choke point, then there's no need to block Dongdae-gu. Or they did even one better. Not only did they block Pohang, but they also blocked another choke point further up north that line. So all I can say is that Ben and Adam played that very, very well. The double layered defense was more than sufficient to put an end to Sam's run. And in fact, it was the optimal strategy because, based on their rules, distance for the runner does not count until you hit a node. So this entire section here that Sam traveled down, which was a good bit of distance, was not counted at all, which gives rise to an interesting strategy. If you see that the runner is coming down a long line, it's actually better to intercept somewhere along the line on a non-nodal station rather than take the nodal station, which tends to be a hub, which usually is better for blocking but counts towards the accumulated distance for a runner, which potentially gives them a higher score, which you don't want. So I think that is a bit of interesting strategy there. Regardless, because of the ability to put down blocks everywhere, this means that the game's far more interactive now, right? Previously, I thought that if you're only allowed to place down blocks at nodes, then the runner can very easily bypass a lot of these nodes by picking the right trains and thereby play a very uninteractive game. But as you saw, this is completely not the case because the blockers are able to place down their blocks virtually everywhere. So there's a lot more interactivity, a lot more strategizing, and so therefore I completely retract my claim. The game's not broken. As we saw from the past episode, there was a lot of interactivity and they got to play that battle challenge. So I think all is good. Right. With that out of the way, with all these updated rules, or should I say false assumptions out of the way, now hopefully we can present some coherent strategy moving forward. So for this episode, Adam's the runner, and the blockers, Sam and Ben, get to leave Seogyeongju Station at 2:15. They have already explained what they plan to do, and indeed, it looks pretty good, which is to first take the 3 p.m. train from Seogyeongju up to Pohang and drop a block there. So they'll be drawing three. They'll have 3 cards here. This is not a nodal station, so they will not get to draw a new card. But in 3 cards, as long as they can find a block that is not a battle challenge, they can easily drop it at Pohang. And assuming they can get it done and return back to the station within 17 minutes, they can then take the 3:35 train down to Dongdaegu. This trip down to Dongdaegu will pass by Seogyeongju station. So they'll draw 1 card from Seogyeongju and 1 card from Dongdaegu for a total of 5 cards. So in 5 cards, if they have 1 block for Pohang and 1 block for Dongdaegu, this would form a pretty good strategy. They can block these 2 stations. That was their plan, and I think it's a pretty solid plan. Even if the roadblock takes a bit more time, they still have the next train that comes within a reasonable time frame. At 4:21 p.m., they can take the same train down to Dongdaegu. They'll arrive slightly later, but still within time to block the runner, as we'll see from the runner analysis later. So all in all, a very good strategy as long as they draw a block within their first 3 cards. If there's no block, so given that the blockers do manage to block both sides of the runner, I would say this makes it incredibly disadvantageous for the runner. Runner wants to be in a position where they can threaten a bi-directional threat at all times. In this case, they want to be able to get onto the high-speed rail, and so the bi-directional threat is going up this way to join the high-speed rail at Donghae versus going down this way to threaten the high-speed rail starting at Dongdaegu. However, these 2 blocks block both these options. By sealing these options off from the runner at the start, the runner is basically checkmated from the first turn, which is pretty unfortunate. The other reason why this is such a disadvantageous position is that due to the geography of the Korean rail network, the fastest way from Seogyeongju station to Dongdaegu is not actually via this line, but by going up to Pohang and then going down to Dongdaegu. This transfer is actually faster. The trains are more frequent, and yeah, compared to this so-called direct service here, which actually isn't all that direct, it's pretty slow. I think it passes through Awa and Yongcheon. It's very slow and rather infrequent. So the Pohang option is better. The trouble with the Pohang option is only the blockers are allowed to take this option. The runner is literally not allowed to transfer at Pohang to get to Dongdaegu because they will crash into themselves. They are going up the line to Pohang and then going back down the same line if they want to get down to Dongdaegu, which results in a crash. So the runner is forbidden from doing this, while the blockers have the ability to jump between those 2 stations at will, which, yeah, makes this a terrible starting station for Adam. So because of that, the blockers' initial play is very obvious, and Adam will really have to rack his brains for this one. I see 4 possible options that Adam can take out from Seogyeongju, and to be honest, a lot of them are pretty bad. Let's go from the worst option to the best one. The first option is to go south. Now, it seems like there's a lot of game to be had in the south part of Korea, but as it turns out, this is the worst option by far. The train out down to Bujeon doesn't leave until tomorrow. Yeah, that's not good. This gives the blockers plenty of time to set up a good defense or a way to intercept the runner. The other problem is this route leaves very little optionality. As I mentioned, you want to threaten a bi-directional fork. This basically railroads you down into this path, and even though there's a split here, realistically there's only one option up. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can take the other option. They both meet at Iksan, right? This is a choke point. There's a choke point here. Not at Samnangjin, I don't think, but you can probably find some station to throw a block down where the runner is forced to pass through in this area. Yeah, let's not even consider this route. I think this is not a smart option. Let's move on to the second option, which is to run straight into Pohang. Now, I'm going to assume that there is a block at Pohang and that Adam needs to clear the block in order to proceed. If there is no block at Pohang, That changes the dynamic of this game entirely. Suddenly the Pohang option becomes far more appealing. But first we'll work on the assumption that there is a block on Pohang. So there are actually two really good reasons for going up to Pohang. One is that this is the earliest train that Adam can take out of Seogyeongju. It leaves at 4:15 p.m. So 1 hour after his departure time of 3:15. He will arrive at Pohang at 4:24 p.m., at which point he is forced to disembark in order to complete the block over there. And assuming he succeeds at the block, he can take a train up that leaves at 6:30. He'll probably have to stop somewhere along the middle to take a rest period. But when he resumes the next day, he can get into Donghae at a fairly respectable time in the morning. From there, he then has access to the rest of the high-speed network. And as we discussed before, this section of high-speed rail from Cheongnyang to Donghae is not very easily blockable because there are high-speed services every 1 or 2 hours and they are express trains, meaning that they will randomly skip stations. There's no choke point. There's no guaranteed choke point between Donghae and Cheongnyang. So realistically, the blockers are unlikely to challenge any station in between Cheongnyang and Donghae. The other appealing part about this route is that assuming everything works as I mentioned, the ceiling for high score is very high because his route will look something like this. He goes up to Donghae, he takes a high speed to Cheongnyang down to Yongsan, assuming he survives whatever block there is there, if there's any. One possible route is to high speed his way all the way down to Dongdaegu and then take the southern route up here and probably get caught somewhere at Iksan. Or do it the other way around. Go down to Iksan and go up to Dongdaegu. Either way, this huge S shape here is likely going to contribute to a very high score. So those are the two pull factors for going up to Pohang. I suppose there's a third factor, which is that Adam gets to enjoy the nice scenic coastal route. That train ride looks really beautiful from Sam's point of view in the last episode. However, there are some problems with this. Firstly, this section here, the Pohang section to Donghae, is a very long section. And so it is very vulnerable to certain curses, particularly the U-turn curse. The U-turn curse is not that bad if it is slapped down prematurely. However, if the blockers know that Adam is taking the line up to Donghae, I'm not sure what the rules are on roadblocks at Pohang. Will Adam have to inform the blockers that he completed the block at Pohang successfully? I'm not sure. But if he has to inform them, then the blockers will know for sure that Adam has only one option, which is to head all the way up north. So if the blockers have access to this information, what they can do is they can simply wait for Adam to be somewhere close to Donghae and then announce that they are slapping down a U-turn on this entire line. Then he'll be forced to traverse the 2.5 hour train journey of shame down to Seogyeongju because that's the node that he departed from, and then basically restart his run, but with about 3-4 hours less on the clock. This would be a huge setback. Huge. It is incredibly risky to go up, is all I'm saying, because certain curses can really punish you for taking such a long route. The other problem with this route is that so far we have assumed that Adam is going to clear the block at Pohang. But what if he doesn't? So when that happens, as we saw from the last run, everyone will go back to the nearest node, which in this case is obviously Seogyeongju. So the next runner will start from Seogyeongju again, the same disadvantageous position. And guess who's the next runner? According to the layover, they have changed their rules for this season. After each of the 3 boys have had a shot, the next runner will be randomly chosen from from second place and third place, one of the 2 non-winning runners. So in this case, that would be Adam and Ben. In other words, if Adam crashes at Pohang, he has a 50% chance of being bumped back into Seogyeongju and forced to start another run in the same disadvantageous station. Why would you do that to yourself? Right? You are just allowing Sam to inch one step closer to taking home the game. So you don't want to get stuck in this loop where you go up to Pohang, you fail the challenge, you're forced to go back to Seogyeongju, the next run starts, the next runner has to go up to Pohang, get blocked, go back down to Seogyeongju, restart another run. This benefits nobody. I think Adam will consider that possibility and avoid this northern route as a result. Of course, again, this is assuming that there's no block on Pohang. If there is a block on Pohang. If there isn't a block on Pohang, it's a completely different story. Let's consider the other options. Option 3 is going west. Now, there's a train going west down to Dongdaegu. The fun thing is, Adam doesn't have to go all the way down to Dongdaegu, where there probably will be a block. Instead, he can, assuming there's a block here, he can stop at Yongcheon, this station right here, right? There's a station Yongcheon that's right here. The train gets in at 6:14 p.m. He'll stay at the station overnight. Next day, early in the morning, 8 a.m., he takes a 1-hour train up to Yeongju. This is the safest option. I do not think that the blockers can get to Yongcheon in time to block it, and anyway, they would have to prioritize Dongdaegu over Yongcheon. And once Adam gets to Yongcheon, the blockers will not be able to get in front of Adam and block Yeongju. At most, they can ride on the same train as Adam, but they will not be able to jump past him. Anyway, as I mentioned in the previous episode, I think it is a very lousy idea for the blockers to leave the high-speed network. As far as possible, they should play defense on the high-speed line, which I have highlighted in yellow, right? So I think this is a decent plan, and it gives Adam some optionality. He can take the fast route out of Yeongju, which goes directly to Cheongnyang. Okay, not directly, but it will make a beeline for Cheongnyang-ni, passing by certain stations like Jecheon. And it's actually the fastest way to get to Cheongnyang-ni without going through Dongdaegu. He'll get into Cheongnyang-ni before 11 a.m. the next day. So if played right, depending on what the blockers do, he might be able to use this route and avoid the double choke point at this part of the map, the Yongsan and Cheongnyang-ni choke point. So this is a decent option, although the distance that Adam covers this way is not very far. The other option he has is to sneak around, which costs more time, but he will be able to make the full use of the northeastern side of the map. He can go up to Donghae, which would get in the afternoon, and then take the high-speed rail along the north, or he can just really milk the snake, right? He can do some combination of this. He can go up to Jecheon, transfer the Dongbeksan, go up to Donghae, or do the reverse. He can go up here, go to Jecheon, go up to Seoul. There's a bunch of ways that Adam can sneak around, or he can just take a direct train. A lot of these options work. In particular, if he takes the Donghae route, you can see the yellow highlight here is Sam's run. He started at Iksan, he made it all the way to Donghae. This is his high score of 458 kilometers. The section from Donghae down does not count because this was the last node that he touched. So Adam, starting from Seogyeongju, if he actually goes through Donghae and takes the northern fast high-speed rail corridor all the way to Cheongnyang-ni, his last node will be at Sangbong, right here. And if you compare, you just eyeball the distance yourselves. The green one does seem to be very slightly longer than the yellow one. So I think he might consider this route simply because it beats Sam's score. Even though Yongsan and Cheongnyang-ni might be very heavily fortified, he might still get a winning score out of this. It makes the Donghae option viable, because otherwise it's a very slow option, right? It gets into Donghae at 2 p.m. as opposed to the direct Cheongnyang-ni option, which is doable even before noon. I think a lot of this comes down to what the blockers do, where they throw down their blocks, what information they reveal to the runner, making this a very dynamic game. And I can't possibly predict what the most optimal route is until we see the moves made by both sides. One thing I will say, however, is regardless of what happens, Adam will have to go through the Cheongnyang-ni and Yongsan choke points. I do not think this route down to Osong is viable, because as soon as you announce your intent to pass through Cheongju, this is a very slow, infrequent train. The blockers can easily abuse it by blocking Osong and throwing down cursors to really punish this route. But going back to Yongsan, so assuming that the runner wants to go back to Yongsan, one thing that we have to keep in mind, which we identified all the way back from post first episode, is that there is this one singular service every day that goes from Yongsan directly to Iksan without stopping at any of the intermediate nodes like Chonan Asan and, importantly, Osong. This train departs at 4:08 p.m. every day. So it may be in the runner, in this case Adam's, best interest to hang around at Yongsan Station, assuming he survives any blocks there, not do anything until that 4:08 train arrives, and make his way straight to Iksan. There is nothing that the blockers can do about this at all. Even if they throw down blocks in the middle, they don't apply, and Adam is guaranteed the distance from Yongsan to Iksan. Really, the only thing that the blockers can do is to curse the route in such a way that Adam is forced to. No, that doesn't make sense. I don't think that works either, because usually what the cursors do is to force you off the train at an intermediate stop. But there is no intermediate stop. It goes directly to Iksan. So I think this is a very powerful teleportation device that is very well worth waiting a few hours for. Even if you arrive at Yongsan at like 12 p.m., it may well be worth waiting 4 hours just to take this train down, because it's guaranteed distance. Okay, so that's the extent to which I can strategize. A lot of gameplay for this option is dynamic and comes down to the cards that the blockers draw and the moves they each play. Alright, let's analyze the final option, which is the YOLO option. Right, it's similar to Sam's YOLO Osong play, but this time it's YOLO Dongdaegu. Instead of stopping at Yongchon Station and going up, Adam can confront any blocks at Dongdaegu head on. He will get in at 6:41 p.m. Assuming he clears the block there, or if there is no block there, he has two options out. He can go to Daejeon the next day, arriving at 7:49 a.m., or go up to Gimcheon, which arrives at 8:05 a.m. Adam threatens the ability to go up north, which resolves to the previous option, option 3. You basically do the same thing where you arrive at Yongju and then either snake there or go straight to Yongsan. The other option, however, is far more deadly. Remember what we said about the ethos of the runner. If the runner is on high-speed rail and the blockers are not in front of the runner can potentially make a huge break. There is nothing that the blockers can do if the runner's in front. They can just take the rest of the high-speed rail line uninhibited. So imagine if, say, Sam and Ben throw down a battle challenge at Dongdaegu. Adam confronts them with the battle challenge, and because Adam is a challenge beast, he wins the battle challenge at Dongdaegu. What happens from there? Well, the blockers can take the same train as Adam, but they will not be able to leapfrog in front of him. And what this means is they will not be able to block him, and so Adam will have the potential to ride the entire high-speed rail all the way to Donghae, and the blockers cannot do anything about it because they are not in front of Adam. This represents a huge threat for Ben and Sam, because this distance is definitely a winning run. It won't be a maximally winning run, because from here, Adam would be forced to crash back at Seogyeongju. Right, so he won't be able to clock any additional distance from the southern part of Korea, but does he need to? It's a high score. So I think this threat is a very appealing one to put on the table, and this is only possible if he confronts them head on at Dongdaegu. There's another important reason why Adam might want to go straight to Dongdaegu despite there being a potential block, which is that, going back to the way in which they select the next runner. If Adam crashes at Dongdaegu by failing the challenge, he will flip a coin with Ben to determine who gets to run next. And 50% of the time, he wins that flip. He gets to run next. His starting station, being Dongdaegu, is a very powerful asset, right? He basically goes from having the worst starting station to possibly one of the best starting stations because, right? Think about it. From Dongdaegu, you threaten to either start by going to Daejeon or going backwards and trying to get up to Donghae. There is no way the blocker can block both of those within the first hour because the travel distance from Dongdaegu to Daejeon is very long. It's 45 minutes even by high-speed rail. And this way, it's more reasonable, but either way, you cannot block off both ends. So Dongdaegu is a very strong starting station, and if given a 50-50 shot to start at Dongdaegu on the next run, plus the opportunity of winning the challenge and making a break for this high-speed rail line, these two factors combined makes Dongdaegu a very good option. And I think as a result, Adam will most likely favor this YOLO play, even though it gives him a very high risk of crashing out immediately. Because of the way they select the next runner, I think the odds are stacked in his favor. Because of this, I think the runners are incentivized to block Daejeon preemptively as a result. I think once they're done, assuming that they draw enough block cards and manage to put down blocks on both Pohang and Dongdaegu, I think it is good for them to preemptively take a train out to Daejeon, even though it is quite a distance, and then work on placing down a block there. Because you really don't want the worst case scenario happening, and the worst case is Adam just getting to run the entire high-speed network from Dongdaegu to Donghae for free. However, they might not draw that many blocks. As we've seen, the cards can be pretty fickle. And if they draw a hand of curses instead, they would probably play a bit more conservatively instead of committing this train ride to Daejeon, which takes quite a lot of time and leaves them unable to react to anything that happens in the east of Korea. What they can do instead is to stay at Dongdaegu, react to where Adam goes by tossing down curses where he announces his position is. So I think a lot of their play will depend on what kind of cards they draw. Right, cursing the Pohang route up north is strong. Cursing the route up to Yeongju is strong. They can also perhaps curse the Gimcheon area as well. There are options, right? At the end of the day, what we must remember is that the blockers are not trying to get Adam to crash immediately. Really, their goal, especially for Sam, their goal is to prevent Adam from making a very long run, one that is longer than 456 kilometers. It doesn't matter whether he crashes after 30 km or 300 km. What matters is that he doesn't beat Sam's high score. And to do that, it would pay dividends for them to play conservatively by protecting against the worst case scenario, which is Adam making a break for the high-speed rail and going a very long distance that way. So I think blocks on Dongdaegu, Daejeon, Osong, Yongsan, and Cheongnyangni make a lot of sense. We'll see if it plays out this way. Until next time.